So, with regard to you, Mr. Hill, and the other locations that you went to in which there were allegations that poll watchers were intimidated or thrown out, was there any indication from anyone we spoke to at any of those other locations that it was a result of any action by people associated with the new Black Panther Party?
At the other locations, no.
Mr. Bowles, same
Not to my
question?
knowledge, no, sir.
And Mr. Morrow?
Correct.
Correct.
Answer is no.
Hypothetically speaking, hypothetically speaking, I would just note for the record that what you've told us here today differs slightly from the affidavits that we've seen here, just in one critical area, and that is the notion that the facts as you saw them, and I have no reason to doubt them, that people, as you say, one person is enough, were turned away. I would just note that for whatever reason they're not in the affidavits, and they probably should have been. But the question that I have goes to, so you're volunteer for the Republican Party. You were volunteer for the I'm sorry. I mean, point, Mr. Hill. Mr. Morrow. You were a volunteer for the Republican Party.
Correct.
Where do you live?
I live in New York, Connecticut.
Connecticut. So you drove down. Drove up. My geography is so bad. To volunteer in the Senate.
Right.
Mr. Hill, you actually live in the Philadelphia, well, in the Pennsylvania area.
9 blocks from that polling station.
Okay. Mr. Bull,
I live in Armenia, New York, which is sort of mid-state New York, about an hour from the city.
Now, were you there for the McCain campaign or for the Republican campaign?
As I said in my statement, I was there. I'm a Democrat, but I was chairman of Democrats for McCain in New York State.
Right.
Almost every state has one of those for either party.
Right, sure.
But this is the first time in the presidential campaign that I've ever worked for a Republican. And I thought we were going to lose in New York substantially.
Hopefully it'll be the last, but
Well, we'll see. It depends on this kind of matter. But no, I'm impressed when the Department of Justice enforces the law. When the president is sworn in, he says, "I will enforce the laws of the United States." The Voting Rights Act says people should not be intimidated. So let's have it enforced.
So were you there?
That's why I'm doing it.
Were you there for the McCain campaign or for the Republican Party?
Oh, the McCain campaign. I don't care very much about the Republican Party in that sense.
So, knowing that, so the question I have for you is, the person who was the most, I believe, culpable in terms of, certainly when you identified, has an injunction in place against, correct? So then what then
For one election, is it just for next election?
It's through all elections up through the presidential of 2012.
Which essentially means 2 days.
No, not at all. There are city elections, there are district elections, there are state elections, there are a number of different elections within it. One might argue, and this is not the time or place to do it, how long should it be forever or whatever? We might want to. But the one statement that kind of startled me about what you said, is you said, this is the worst kind of voter intimidation you've ever seen.
Yes, I've never seen the entrance of a polling place blocked by uniformed men with a weapon. And the reason, but you can answer the question. It really is, because even when I was in Mississippi, particularly a little town called Midnight, Mississippi, and there were truly nooses across under a tree, and I thought this really is the end. I stopped the voting there until they took me down. But even then, you could go in and cast your vote. Here you had to go, as you said, within arm's length of an armed man. And I think that's really egregious. And my own point of view, just to put in a sentence, is that Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy did not die to have armed thugs in uniforms block the door to polling places.
I understand, but let me ask you
But
this.
that's an important point.
But it's an important point, but let me ask you this. I'm sorry.
Commissioner Yankee, you've run out of time.
Well, I was in the middle of asking a question, and he wanted to
You ran
ask
out of
a
time
question.
during your last
So the question I have, though, is, I appreciate what it is you're saying, but certainly you can't mean that this is the worst form of voter intimidation. Certainly Selma, certainly the 3
I've never
were
seen,
killed.
well, you're giving me an answer, you're telling me that I certainly can't mean what I mean, is that what you're saying?
No,
to me?
I'm sure you can't.
You just said that to me, you just said you currently,
I
you
said
cannot
you
mean what you
certainly
mean, is that a question?
You know what, you certainly, I'm gonna ask you that. Do you really mean that it's the worst example ever?
No, I didn't say ever, I said I've seen. I have never in my lifetime, I've worked in 7 states in elections, seen an armed person blocking the door to a polling place.
And the people, and
Okay.
do you see people still going in and voting?
Commissioner Yaki,
People
you
were
have.
still voting.
That's another question.
Commissioner
Finish
Yaki, you
questions.
have run out of time.
Okay.
Commissioner Melendez.
I'm sorry, as a point of order, I was watching the red dot for some of the other commissioners continue on for quite some time. I actually have my watch going right here. And I did not come anywhere close to where some of those other red dots were at the point that it was over.
Commissioner Yaki, I have been.
But what I would do, we are allowed a second round, and I'll reserve for the second round.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Melendez.
Thank you.
You tell, this is for all three. You said that you saw people approach the polling place and that they were turned away. Did you actually tell that to the Department of Justice?
Yes, I did.
I didn't say they were turned away, you said that, not me. I said they walked up the drive and turned around. I didn't say they were turned away.
Okay.
You changed the language there.
Yeah, I didn't say that.
Why don't you yield the rest of your time to Commissioner Yaki so he can finish?
Yeah. Your voter poll watching protection roles that you had, aside from this one precinct, did you hear of any other incident involving the new Black Panther Party intimidating poll watchers or voters?
I did not. No, I did not.
I did not.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Harriet.
I just have one question, I think, and that is with regard to the other precincts where poll watchers may have been intimidated. Have the harassing parties, or were the harassing parties in those situations, were they ever identified to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge. I want to make it clear that it wasn't always malfeasance at those polling places. It was on a few occasions. Some of it was just poor information. The citywide accreditation.
What do you mean? What do you mean on that?
Well, the citywide accreditation allowed certified poll watchers to go into any poll anywhere in the city, whether they were Democrat or Republican. At some of the polling places, whomever was in charge were making the argument that only if your documentation said their physical address could you get into their poll place. So it wasn't always intimidation. I don't want to make it sound like it was bigger than it was, because it wasn't. And I had Mike with me for the legal background, and we were able to give the statute and get guys back into those places fairly quickly. In the places where there were intimidation, which would have been 2 or 3 more places, we just explained that we're not going anywhere until these people get back into the building.
Who was doing the intimidating?
Committeemen for the most part, or self-identified committeemen. I don't know if they were necessarily committeemen. In a couple of cases, the poll watchers were 20, 21 years old and weren't really sure of themselves. And the one in particular, who we actually eventually developed a pretty decent rapport with, was a large guy, and he was bodying up on them and attempting to be intimidating and to keep them out of the building. And then once Mike explained the statute, and I said, well, I'm not going anywhere until they get inside. Eventually, it was just easier to agree with us and get rid of us and let them in the building than to have us stay around out there.
Did you hear about any other cases?
Oh, dozens during the course of the day. They were related back and forth. Because of our particular situation, we were sent to some of the rougher neighborhoods. And that was part of the deal that, they told me at the beginning. They said at 6:30 in the morning, be expected you're gonna go to bad neighborhoods and it's gonna be, tough all day long. Okay, cool.